Hello everyone, this is Screen Recapped, and today we will be talking about a 2013 science fiction comedy film called The World's End. Be ready for spoilers ahead! Gary King, a 40-year-old alcoholic, retains the mindset and immaturity of his teenage years, whereas his four boyhood friends, Oliver Chamberlain, Peter Page, Stephen Prince, and Andrew Knightley, have all matured. The four have become estranged from Gary until one day, attempting to recapture his youth, he contacts and invites them to complete the Golden Mile, a pub crawl encompassing the 12 pubs of their hometown of Newton Haven, the last of them being The World's End. The group attempted the crawl as teens, 23 years previously on their last day of school, but failed to reach the final 3 pubs. Andy, now a teetotaler due to a drunk driving accident years ago involving himself and Gary, reluctantly agrees to join after Gary lies about his mum dying. At the second pub, the Old Familiar, the group encounters Oliver's sister, Sam, who Gary and Stephen fought over in school. In the teenage crawl, Gary had sex with Sam in the toilets of the 7th pub, the Two-Headed Dog. Early into the crawl, the town residents appear eerily stoic and do not seem to recognize the group, except for the barman of the 3rd pub, the famous Cock, who tells them that they are banned. At the 4th pub, the Cross Hands, the group begins berating Gary for his childishness and lack of empathy when he interrupts a tragic story from Peter. Angry and upset, Gary goes to the toilet where he gets into a fight with a teenager and knocks his head off, exposing him as an android. As Gary's friends find him in the bathroom, initially to confront him about lying about his mother's death, the other members of the teen's gang, all of whom are also androids filled with a blue ink-like substance, enter the bathroom and engage in a battle against the human friends. The group realizes that the entire town has been replaced with android simulants. In shock, Andy abandons his teetotal lifestyle. Gary urges them to continue the pub crawl to avoid suspicion. At the trusty servant, Oliver goes to the toilet while the others learn that the androids want to improve humanity after Gary tries to buy some herbal refreshment, discovering that drug dealer Trevor is in league with the androids. The group bumps into Sam once more at the Two-Headed Dog, where Gary, Sam, and Stephen fight a pair of twin androids. She tags along with them to the Mermaid, where Stephen discovers that the androids are trying to build a prosperous, galactic conglomerate, with humanity working alongside them, and that any humans refusing will be replaced with identical simulants. When the group arrives at the Beehive, the androids attempt to convince the humans to join their assimilation. Unwilling to lose their humanity and finding out that Oliver has been replaced, the group fights against a bar full of androids. After escaping the Beehive, the situation worsens. Gary lets Sam, the only one sober enough to drive safely, escape Newton Haven by herself. Pete gets captured after attacking the android that replaced his childhood bully, and, when Andy and Stephen want to go home as a result, Gary ditches them at the King's Head to finish the Golden Mile alone. Andy and Stephen chase after Gary, as does the rest of Newton Haven, and Stephen gets captured at the hole in the wall when he arrives to drive himself and his remaining friends out of town. Andy catches up to Gary at the World's End and confronts him, provoking a fight. During their scuffle, Andy shares that his marriage is troubled and Gary's wrists are exposed, revealing evidence of a recent suicide attempt. Andy tries to stop Gary from drawing his final pint, but Gary clings to completing the mile, saying it is the only thing in life he can achieve. When Gary pulls the lever to pour himself a pint, the floor lowers into a hidden chamber. A disembodied alien entity, known as the Network, tells Gary and Andy that the simulant invasion has been responsible for the technological advances in telecommunication over recent decades, which are the first step to humanity joining a galactic community. The Network offers Gary eternal youth if he becomes a simulant, but he refuses. Along with Andy and Stephen, who has survived, Gary gets into a foul-mouthed debate with the Network, calling out the tyranny in the latter's plan and demanding that humanity be left to its own devices. Eventually, the Network, exasperated, agrees to abandon the invasion. Sam comes back to rescue Gary, Andy, and Stephen and they head for the hills as the town is destroyed, but are unable to outrun the pulse triggered by the departure of the Network, which deactivates Sam's car. Sometime later, Andy relates that the pulse triggered a worldwide blackout that destroyed all electrical power on Earth, sending humanity back to the Dark Ages. The remaining simulants reactivated a few weeks later, and, although they are now independent from the network, they are mistrusted and shunned by most of the surviving humans. Annie's marriage has recovered, Steven is in a relationship with Sam, and the simulant versions of Peter and Oliver have picked up where their human versions left off. In the ruins of Newton Haven, the now sober Gary enters a pub with the simulant versions of his younger friends and orders water. When the bartender refuses to serve simulants, Gary leads his friends into a brawl. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching!